So kia ora everyone. Let's kick off this workshop, the CNE workshop. So we've got 4 items today. First one is from the Parks team. So I'm just going to invite Alex and Christine to the team to present the Fernhill Reserve Plan.
Awesome. Kia ora councillors. I'm Alex Jameson. I'm a planner in the Parks team, and I'm here with Christine Skipworth, who is the team leader of our Parks planning team. So I'm here today to provide an update on the Sunshine Bay Development Plan project and to seek feedback on the work that we have done to date on this. The project has been initiated by a request from the Fernhill and Sunshine Bay Community Association to enable improvements to the existing Sunshine Bay Reserve as shown on the map. The Sunshine Bay Beach, boat ramp and jetty area is not included as part of this project, and that's just due to the scope for the Community Association. You may remember that you recently endorsed the review of the Sunshine Bay, Frankton and Kelvin Heights RMP from 1991. It's worth noting that the RMP review and the development plan can run concurrently. The reserve is 4.2 hectares in area and largely undeveloped. It has a large open space area closest to Fernhill Road, as I'm sure most of you know, which is the most utilised part of the reserve, primarily by dog walkers and local residents. The remainder of the reserve is covered in dense vegetation with pockets of native bush and weeds and pest plant species. There are 2 steep gullies that run through the site containing unnamed streams and existing QRDC 3 waters infrastructure. There are a number of historical encroachments along the northern boundary of the reserve from various private properties. These primarily occupy the reserve via landscaping and some hard structures. So as I mentioned, the request came from the local community association to facilitate improvements to this reserve. These sought to make the reserve more accessible and desirable for the local community as it is currently underutilised. It was determined that a development plan was considered the most suitable solution to enable this request. The Community Association engaged a landscape architect to provide a high-level concept plan of their improvements to the reserve, and this plan has been reviewed by various council teams to ensure that any questions or concerns have been addressed, and these comments have been worked through with the Community Association. And the plan has been refined to address these concerns. So Council's internal design team has made additional changes which form the current plan that is in front of you today. We've also engaged with Okaha and Te Ao Marama on this project, and that feedback was to ensure that the kaitahu values were brought through into the design and the management of this area, and they also supported riparian planting within the gullies. The improvements from the Community Association included improved access to the reserve, as the western part of the reserve is largely inaccessible. And this was through the addition of a pedestrian bridge and new trails to various viewpoints. The formalisation of the existing grassed area to a flat usable space was also a key request for a flat kick-around area and a formal recreation space, along with key facilities such as toilets, seating and a barbecue and picnic area. A flat area was also requested for community events, something that the Community Association was extremely passionate about to ensure that a local place was there for residents to use and the community to gather. And they also supported more parking near the Sunshine Bay boat ramp and beach area to support that high level of use that we see in that area. And weed removal and native enhancement was also supported throughout the entire reserve to improve and restore biodiversity. I just want to note that we will be notifying the plan as a 2-page document, so it is quite small, potentially compared to some of our other development plans that we have. But the first page will contain the title, contextual information, kaitahu values, and the overall objectives of the plan, just written out. And then the second page will be the plan that is in front of you today, showing the reserve and various improvements. In terms of next steps, we're hoping to collect your feedback and make any final changes to the plan over the next couple of weeks before notifying the plan publicly for 1 month via comms and a Let's Talk page. Public and stakeholder feedback will direct any changes before coming back to CNE for formal adoption later this year. And once adopted, we will aim to implement these improvements. This could be through annual plan or LTP budgets or external funding sources. Did
Thank
anyone
you.
have any
That's great.
questions?
Thanks, Alex. I know there's been a huge amount of work. I have a question,
Go for it.
thanks. There's a numerous number of properties that encroach on the reserve currently.
Yeah.
Have you had much feedback from them at this stage?
Yes, so we touch base with all of the properties that encroach along the northern boundary, and we've met with all of them. So they completely understand, I guess, where the boundary is. A lot of them are historical encroachments, as I said, so they have been there for 30 plus years. And so I think it was really important to meet with those people and show the community's vision for this space, because it is quite privatised, given that it's so inaccessible. So yeah, just showing the community's vision for those areas and yeah, getting the community to kind of reclaim that space so they're along for the journey. And a lot of them were definitely open to it. There's a lot of, ownership over those areas as well. And they do pest and weed control in the reserve actually to, kind of beautify it and make it a nicer space. So yeah, it was really important for us to meet with them.
So I think one of the things that stands out to me is that yellow line that sets the boundary actually crosses over some buildings.
Yeah, there is a large retaining wall, a hot tub, some structures, greenhouses. Yeah, it's quite extensive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it certainly is. So,
Yeah.
okay, so it's good to, I guess, at some point there'll be some friction there.
Yeah, yes, I guess so. And we have had those initial discussions, and they will be sent the plan via email to comment on just as any other community member.
And then secondly, was there ever any parking raised for the Fernhill Road area where sort of the main entrance is currently?
No, the initial parking was deemed suitable. And I guess that main area, the grassed area, is, probably the most usable area of the reserve. So the community association did want to retain that for, a flat pick around space, a barbecue area, that sort of thing, rather than adding in more parking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, sounds
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
Go for it.
When it's the little bit that has pedestrian crossing,
Mhm.
is that going to be an actual pedestrian crossing, or that's just where the guidance will be to cross?
Yes, so yeah, we're not talking about any improvements within the road corridor at
Okay.
all. That is just something that we'll need to consider if we do put in a parking area down there.
Yeah.
The pedestrian safety in the area is very bad at the
Yes,
moment.
well, that's what I was thinking. I was like,
Yeah, but we
how
have,
would you do that? Because would you be able to get a pedestrian crossing there, or?
yeah, that's kind of something we'll need to consider potentially at a later date. But we have had discussions with the speed management team at
Yeah.
council, because they're talking about reducing the speed from 100 down to 60 until after the boat ramp.
Yeah.
So that would improve safety, but they're also talking about designing or upgrading the existing Fernhill Road intersection.
Mhm.
So putting in a safe pedestrian access across any new intersection
Yeah.
to get to the track and across the road.
Oh,
is
yeah,
really
so
important.
that's that Fernhill Road right here, because that is pretty dangerous there. Yeah. Well, thank you.
So the Three Waters infrastructure that's in the reserve, is there a surge pump station?
Wastewater pumps. Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a couple of obviously open channels with those creeks that run through there, which are part of the stormwater system as well.
Yes. Yeah.
With the properties that are encroaching over it, if there's any areas of those, it's areas that they've taken as part of their property that aren't included in the development plan works, is there any consideration of seeing whether those property owners want to? I know there's a whole process to go through of paying for that land.
Yeah, this is a widespread issue that we have on many of our reserves. And I guess this step with the development plan has enabled us to touch base and kind of have a good relationship with these landowners right from the beginning. There is no improvements, I guess, shown within the area where people are encroaching, where the private properties are encroaching. But the idea is that we would do some planting and kind of general restoration in that area. Yeah, I guess encroachments are something that we struggle with a lot. So, yeah,
I guess that question is more of a general one rather than specifically related to these properties, but
yeah,
if there's been a reserve that hasn't had any work done on it, council hasn't had any interest in it, at least in terms of maintaining it for a number of years, and someone has done something with it.
yeah.
Is there an avenue for people to say, well, yeah, we would like to be able to have the option of buying it?
I guess it's just done on a case by case basis. Our initial feeling is potentially no, just through the Reserves Act, you
Yeah.
have to declassify and all sorts of things. So it's quite tricky. Yeah, the reserve is obviously there. It is public land, and our intention for this piece of land anyway is to keep it that way.
And obviously, a general property owner will know that they're outside their boundary and on a reserve.
I think that was the importance of that first meeting as well, was taking a map of their area and showing them actually, because a lot of them potentially aren't aware. So education is really important as well. Yeah.
And you said there too, with quite significant growth in the area, it's a bit of an initial that arises. So a lot of our reserves can be on distal areas, or what were distal areas on our townships, maybe not got the same sort of community interest in them. So local people can tend to move into those spaces because they feel like they have political ownership. But as our communities grow and there's more interest in those spaces, those reserve spaces become quite important and actually gain value.
I mean, sometimes it's come from a point where, if the land adjacent to their boundary hasn't been maintained and it's coming in some kind of weed, then they say, well, we'll clear that. We'll be able to have a better view or use this as an extra space.
Yeah.
I guess the onus is on the property owner to realise that that may be well and good while it's not being used for the public, for the community, but at some point it might be.
Yeah, and I think that's it as well. That's why these have been around since those houses were built in the 70s and 80s. It started off as some initial, vegetation removal, and it's come into quite a substantial occupation.
Yeah, sorry, just one sort of observation though. A lot of these buildings are actually right on the border of the boundary. I don't even know if they do some of the actual houses cross over the boundary.
I think they are basically on the boundary. Yeah.
So not even a centimetre move.
Yeah, it might be, a couple centimetres. Yeah. So it's,
But I see you have generally reflected that by having planting strips along those areas.
Yeah, and I guess the intention is we don't want to plant up and completely obstruct their views. That's not the intention, but I think showing that there is community interest in this reserve as public land is, important, and showing how we're going to manage that in the future is important for the landowners as well.
This is really cool. It's really cool that it's going to come from the community. It's been integrated and it's interfaced with what council have done. A few questions. What did council change from the landscape architect and why?
That's a great question. So there was initially like a mulch station proposed and things like that, because there is a small community garden, and the community association sees that as, a community gathering space, but there are questions around access, can we get water there, that sort of thing, like what is this going to look like in the future? Does the community want to lease or license that space? So there's kind of bigger questions to that. But the main changes were basically they wanted some gym equipment that we decided was probably not appropriate for this reserve. As I said, they had a mulch station as well, which solid waste kind of flagged a few issues around. But largely it's pretty consistent with what the community association proposed. It's just about increasing access throughout the reserve, celebrating the existing viewpoints that are there as well, creating some parking to take the load off the Sunshine Bay boat ramp area, and just having a flat usable space for the community.
And I guess is this a good model to replicate in other places? I mean, how is the parks team's work stream? And it feels like a great intermediary where there are, certain aspects that people can really have some buy-in. Is this an obscurity? Is this sort of the abnormal one-off, or is this sort of more how things are developing?
I think this came about because the community association had so many ideas for the space.
Right.
And so to be able to, funnel that into a usable plan that we can then get funding for.
Yeah.
This was seen as the best solution and it could definitely be used elsewhere. I guess it would just be how it fits into the, our work stream and everything like that. But
Yeah.
I think it's a great way for a large reserve to show various improvements and kind of get some ideas from the community on what they do want to see here and then to be able to implement that.
And I guess now that there's a structure and there's a plan, there's a good sense of confidence moving forward that, elements of delivering this could be done by the community who are like involved. How does that look and feel? Because, there's some things that definitely need funding to flatten that land. It's going to take some, the CapEx, but a lot of planting and stuff that can be done. How do you move forward from here?
Well, I guess there's kind of various options for us. There are the community association or other community groups might want to get in there and start doing restoration work like we're doing, all around the Frankton Arm or all around the district. And then others might want to contribute to the pump track as like a first step. So yeah, how we navigate through that, I guess we'll have our list of priorities that we will get funding for. What we see is priorities, I guess, probably the flat usable space, toilets, that sort of thing. But we're definitely open to other funding avenues as well.
That's cool.
How that looks, yeah.
Very cool.
So I think you mentioned the current community garden. There's a couple of sort of greenhouses or polyhouses that you can see from Frankton Road. Is that where the current garden space is, or what's that?
It's slightly above there, so it's where the main viewpoint is, that little triangle area. Yeah, what that actually looks like, whether it will be a fully fledged community garden like we've got out at Court Road or out at Hanley's, not too sure. But the community, because we are going to go out publicly, just wanted, that's one of their key ideas. They did want to include that. But the greenhouses are slightly, there's some fruit trees as well, and then greenhouses just across from that. And
What's the current arrangement for those greenhouses that are there? How are they there? Under what arrangement?
one of the landowners, adjoining landowners nearby, I think, he was happy to remove them, but whether they can stay and be a community asset, we'll look into that.
So they're not there under any sort of agreement officially.
They've got great tomatoes though, if you want
Right.
to. Anyone's welcome.
Thanks. Any more questions? No? I was just going to mention to your question, Cody, I think, I don't think the team have got all the answers about how they will deliver things at the moment.
Yeah.
But I think there's a willingness from the team to work with the community. And so
Makes a lot of sense, just in terms of, from our point of view, wanting to put structure around it, wanting to make sure that there's not too much conflict, dealing with the adjacent landowners and having that sort of sincerity to the process. So then the community can go, okay, we'll do all the right things and make sure that things are in the right place. And then we can start reinvesting. And just as a way to meet people halfway, I think it's really cool. So great effort. It's really cool to see this kind of stuff. And would love to see it, proliferate, because there's a lot of people, this really empowers people, makes them feel like they can, do something quite meaningful. And I think ultimately, you get great bang for buck when people are joined in. And I'm sort of sitting there trying to be like agnostic around the whole thing. But I'm excited. I'm excited for, for your community. It's really cool.
No, it's our community, but it's it is very exciting. In Fernhill, Sunshine Bay as well, there's a lot of families and a lot of workers and renters there. So to have that space, in the future is something quite remarkable, because Fernhill has always been sort of the one where everyone just lives there for a few years and then leaves. But there are actually some really well-established people living there, including myself.
And you said also gym equipment came up at some point, but there's no intention to have that at the moment.
No, we did decide it's probably not the best location.
So no Sunshine Bay Muscle Beach.
Yeah. Not for now.
all right. Councillor Kane, did you? I think is that all the question?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Anything else from you?
No, I think the plan is to just go out publicly, I think tentatively the 3rd of August, the 3rd to the 31st. So you'll see some comms around that.
Right. Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. So the next item is Queenstown Lakes, Otago Spaces Places Facility Strategy. Simon Patrick, yeah. Alan Wainwright and James Nation. Okay,
James Nation.
Oh, there he
I'll do
is.
the Yeah.
Oh, you'll get, okay, you've got awesome things on.
Ready to go?
Yes, sorry. Oh, sorry.
All right.
Yeah, thank you, councillors. Thanks for the privilege of being here to talk about some very important mahi that we're doing in the sport and recreation space. What I'd like to do very quickly is just introduce you to two people. Some you hopefully know Alan Wainwright, our Wanaka Recreation Centre Manager. Been with us for quite a while and doing some absolute awesome job over there. And also James Nation, who is the Chief Executive of Sport Otago, or better known as Sport Central in our part of the world. So James is 3.5 years. I can't remember the time correctly. Almost 3 years. It's Sport Otago. And Sport Otago, of course, Sport Central is one of our very key partners in the sport and recreation space, and they deliver a lot of awesome things for us that we wouldn't be able to do in our region if we didn't come on board. And they've been a key driver of the strategy in association with Sport New Zealand. So we'd just like to take you through it very quickly through the strategy, just give you some quick update, and kind of where we're at with it, get some feedback from you, and then obviously work on what the next steps are going to be. Cool. All right. So we started. Probably the first thing to say is, and we use a very long title, the QLDC CODC Sub-Regional Recreation and Sport Facility Strategy was what we did previously back in 2018 through to about 2020. So that was really a guidance document, which was, I guess, doing a bit of a stock take on what recreation sport facilities, play recreation sport facilities we had across the district, ourselves, and also Central Otago District Council, worked closely with them. And it was really around providing guidance about what are the assets we needed moving forward to deliver for our communities. So fast forward a few years, and obviously as part of that strategy, we've done a review. And so the review was led by James, with obviously all the key stakeholders in the room. And we started in December last year, and obviously we've had a number of public workshops, a number of conversations, stakeholder engagements, etc. We involved a consultant called RSL, who helped pull the document together for us. We looked at, I guess, where were the gaps, what was the difference between the last strategy and this strategy, what was new, what the population data, the usual things you look at the strategy. So we pulled all that draft together, and we currently have the draft sitting with us at the moment. That's why we thought it's quite an opportunity to come and talk to you around that.
Cool. So just around the purpose of it, and you can support Otago's role, and thank you very much, Simon, for inviting me to come and present as well, but it's awesome to be here. So just our role was around coordinating this project, and first up was around aligning some funding. Very kindly, QLDC put some money in, Central Otago District Council, Sport New Zealand, and CLT as well. So, and then went through the project in terms of getting some consultants on board. So we led that process and landed with RSL. So space is in place as a key component of Sport New Zealand's strategy, and it's vitally important to Sport Otago as well. Having good facilities, fields, both for sport and for active recreation and play, are super important to a healthy, vital and resilient community. So it fits in, and it's about being active. So you've got those in place, activity levels rise. So just in terms of the Otago region, it's broken into two sub-regions. So we've got coastal Otago and we've got the central Otago, Queenstown Lakes. Coastal Otago strategy for spaces and places was done in 2023. This one 2020, and it's an update. So the plan is to bring those two regions, sub-regions together into an Otago region one, and we recognise that they both have their differences. So Otago is coastal Otago is quite different to what it is in here. And just in recognition of updating the Central Otago Queenstown Lakes strategy is, in 6 years, there's been a huge amount of growth and just quite a change in the landscape here that just meant it was quite important to actually review that and update it. So there is alignment, but it's recognising that at the local level, it is very much super important to have that lens, but also the overall Otago regional lens as well. So it's based on a spaces and places framework that Sport New Zealand put together in 2024. I'll talk a bit more to that a couple of slides on, but it is around the principles of good decision making. So, and really this strategy is to help inform councils on their strategies and policies and where to invest in the community, assist with that long-term planning provision. It's based on evidence of need, and it's around offering prioritisation in the context of the wider requirements across the sub-region, but pulling in the regional requirements as well. The strategy covers aquatics, so it's pool boot based and natural, indoor spaces and places, so multi-use, court-based and specialised, outdoor sports spaces and places, so field and court sports, and then other spaces and places, ice sports, ice rinks, and other specialised sports. So the intent for this strategy is to have it adopted by both QLDC and CODC. Central Otago District Council are doing a similar workshop to this on the 12th of August. So I'll be sitting alongside Gordon Bailey there to help present that as well. Thanks.
Probably just before you jump in, probably the key thing to say is this is not it's not a hard and fast decision framework. So what it does is it provides a framework, but ultimately each of the councils will have their own ability to use it how they want to use it. So it's not a group coming up with a whole bunch of decisions for you. It's basically a framework that says this is the information, this is the data, this is the recommendations. How you want to use it as QDC or CODC, it's totally up to you. And obviously, as you're aware of my conversations on the infrastructure strategy and the LTP conversations, we are well behind where we need to be in a lot of these spaces. And it's something that obviously we use and our funders will use as well as a guiding document for how, I guess, you look at you investing in the future. And we'll be referring back to that document to say, these are the things that have been clearly identified. These are what the priorities and the needs are from our communities. And this is where, obviously we would like to put your investment moving forward.
Can I ask a question? So is this sort of the standard orthodox way that councils would approach this, though, to understand the deficit in the sports infrastructure and engage with the likes of Sport Central?
Yeah. So
exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. So Sport New Zealand's intent across the country is to work directly with the councils via the regional sports trusts and put in place this framework so that good decisions can be made based on, I think it's 11 principles. And we've slightly adapted it to more of a Otago part, but that's the intent of it, is that it's used to help inform that decision making to align where you can put your funds essentially.
Yep, it's about 17, probably less than that, 13.
I think you're 12
or 13 plans across, like this strategy across
New Zealand.
Yeah, and so we're obviously the Otago one is coastal sub strategy and the Central Otago QODC strategy. The question of, we're talking obviously Head Start, Novation, those kind of conversations, but the reality is, as I said clearly, we need to think not only local, but we've got to think global as well. So no point us building a velodrome, as I've said before, here in Queenstown, we'll go one just down the road in Otago. So, you've got to think logically about what assets we actually need in our region and what is our place, I guess, within the Sport New Zealand framework and Sport New Zealand landscape as well.
Now, no strategy is complete without some good stakeholder engagement. So how we've approached this is we initially had direct engagement with council staff, so CODC, QODC, and Sport Otago making up the project steering group. There was online discussion with the Otago Regional Space and Places Steering Group, and that's made up of different councils from Dunedin, Waitaki, CODC, ourselves, as well as funders from CLT, Community Trust, Otago Community Trust, and Sports Otago. Then we also did an online community stakeholder survey, and that we got 52 responses for that, which was good, considering it can be quite tough getting those responses. So we're pretty happy that was open between 21st of January, 30th of Feb. And lastly, we had sort of 4 stakeholder in-person workshops, which was held across the Central Otago District, and they averaged between 6 to 19 per workshop to get that direct feedback.
I would just add to that, there was a lot of existing stakeholder engagement that fed into this as well. So via the 2 councils, RSL was inundated with a whole lot of work that has happened probably since 2020. So it is a good 6 years time frame that stakeholder engagement has happened.
And I think, I mean, you've heard me say it before, but our volunteers and sports organisations get tired of saying the same thing over and over again. And certainly we got quite a lot of that feedback through this process as well around that. But ultimately, we want to make sure the information we had was accurate, and we had to pull it up at a macro level, but actually get down into the detail for us as well. So essentially, the community kind of came back and said, these are the things that we want, we desire, we need. Nothing you haven't already probably heard me say or other people say for a long time. We need more sports fields across the district with lighting, specifically for trainings. Training is one of our biggest issues, not necessarily competition, but certainly around trainings in localised areas. Obviously indoor sport, we've got QEC, indoor courts project, but also in Wanaka, we obviously have the Paitara lease at some stage will come up for renewal in the next wee while, and there will be some decision in the LTP process around what we do with that venue, and also looking at indoor sport capacity as part of a wider model in our growth areas as well, Southern Corridor and Eastern Corridor. One of the big things that came through really strongly was actually as well as the playing facilities. So, for example, I'll use Jack Tewa as a great example in the Southern Corridor. We've got fields, good quality. We've got good ancillary sort of areas around it for green space and training, but we've got old quarter comps and one sort of toilet there. So it's not an appropriate change room. It's not an appropriate toilet block. It's there's no lighting, and the groups themselves would probably say, well, look, we would probably use Jack Tewa a lot more if we had those type of facilities there, because it means we can go and train and then go and have a shower, or go and train and have a meeting, or whatever. So certainly these amenity facilities is one that we need to really carefully look at across the region, and it may be better to do some of these to get increased usage of some of the existing assets that we've got rather than build new assets too. So it's a bit of a balancing act between the two. Obviously, we're looking at an overall network. You'll be aware, obviously, through infrastructure strategy, we're looking at hub and spoke model as sort of key theme, come back to you with options around that. But the other things also, we're ensuring we have good policy frameworks, so making sure we have good justification for the decisions that you make, and make sure that they're consistent, make sure that people understand them out in our communities. Some of the feedback we got from our communities was, yeah, this is great, we go to an LTP and we see this, we've got a XYZ in year 4, 5, 6. They think it's locked in. Reality, it's actually not, and it changes, as we know, frequently. And so we've got a little bit of education work that needs to be done in that space, particularly, which I think Sport Otago will definitely, or Sports Central will definitely take a lead alongside us with. The other one's also about improved accessibility and inclusion and equity across codes. That was really important, and that's also backed up with a piece of work that Marie Day's just done about accessibility in all of our facilities, ensuring how do we enable people to get more easy access to facilities in these spaces so they can do the activities they want to do. And we know that we are a deficit at the moment across the region in that space. And obviously there was some stuff around event hosting in our hubs and how do we maximise those, particularly when it came to Wanaka with Valentine Road. What does the implications of potentially a sports hub there look like in relation to Cromwell, with the racecourse, for example, and there's some work around that needs to be done moving forward.
Cool. Just touching on the planning principles. So this is the Sport New Zealand framework. that was adapted for the coastal Otago, and the steering group adopted it for this Central Otago Queenstown Lake strategy. So there's a number there. I guess it is that they're all combined, and there's no real one that comes out as dominating. And one thing that we would say as we went through this was just the engagement with mana whenua was quite light, and it was not for lack of trying. And I think that's something that's certainly a recommendation that's come out. It's just around engagement with mana whenua and strengthening that across the region in reality, just to have really good voices at the table helping inform those decision making. So it was notably lacking in terms of going out and getting that feedback as we went through the process. So that was just one thing that comes into this that is at the top that we were very aware of. Simon's touched on a lot of this around inclusiveness and accessibility, and it is around reflective of the community and sub-region. And I think that's where even Queenstown Lakes versus Central Otago, they're slightly different. And it is up to the councils. They do have that flexibility to work within it. So it is around taking that regional view, but dropping it right down to what is the local need. And then just around best value for money as well. So that hub and spoke model, do we need to build new things when we can actually just modify and put in better amenities, redo the underground work so that actually the fields aren't wet. So there's lots in this that it makes logical sense when you look at it, but it is laid out quite nicely, and the recommendations come through based on these planning principles.
So very quickly, I'm going to spend a lot of time on the slide, but basically there was 2 levels of recommendations. One was kind of that operational policy recommendations, and the other one was around the actual what, the ethics, what do we actually need to do, what are the priorities around that. And then we had, I guess, some key ones out of those sort of policy ones was about the leadership amongst all our partners. We're not doing this in isolation. We're working with all our partners to try and deliver a better outcome for our communities. So it was making sure that we were keeping up to date with that, making sure we were keeping everybody on board with what was happening, and also looking at working more closely with Ministry of Education, for example, and some of our funders and some of the things that they're investing in as well. Certainly in the sort of sub-regional space, there was some recommendations around some of the good work that Sport Otago, Sport Central is doing at the moment around capacity building for our clubs. So a lot of huddle, we've heard Marie talk about, is one of our key aspects to try and develop the capacity of our clubs to actually utilise facilities that we have, the existing ones, but also potentially the new ones as well. Very quickly, in the first couple of years, short timeframes, there were a couple of things: annual monitoring, example Sport League recommendations, as I said about the education approach to the LTP, looking at sub-regional forums, our sports breakfasts, those sorts of things. And then obviously for QODC and CODC, there were some things around how do we work better cross-boundary. In reality, and I think I've said this to you before, in an ideal world, if you have one massive hub in the central region, you'd probably put in from logically, right? Because transport from everywhere is 30, 40 minutes, would make sense. In reality, that isn't the case. So we've got to say, okay, how do we make that work so that we're not duplicating things that we don't need to, and making sure we're investing in the right things for our communities. And as I said, the same things, again, one of the key things came up was land acquisition, making sure that we're buying land now for the future, and making sure that we've got those spaces available so we're not sort of having to kind of squeeze things into places that doesn't fit for the local communities. And as I said before about sport amenities, definitely around that space, and providing those low-cost opportunities as well, which is one of the key things that came through in the feedback of ensuring that the activities we're doing, the facilities we build, that we're not just pricing people out of the ability to actually access these things. Some of the key things that came through was obviously investigate the Lake Sports Trust proposal, which is a proposal that's been floating around a little bit in the Wakatipu space around sort of squash and indoor cricket training centre. Also, there's a bit more work to be done with Central Otago football and mainland South football. Just around one of the recommendations from the previous strategy was about home for football. What does that actually mean in this region? Is it 6 fields in one place? Is it 4 fields in multiple places. What is it? So we need a bit more work around that space. And then obviously golf is another one. Franklin Golf Course is obviously one that will come to the table on the 11th of August. We will have a conversation with you around that. As we talked about from a race course, master plan was done last year, I think it was. And there's some further work to be done on that as a result of obviously the strategy and what could or couldn't happen there. And there were things like rugby truck ground upgrades, indoor courts, looking at bowls future, for example, and sustainability of those across CODC area, probably more than here. But examples long term was again around athletics. We've heard through the council table here a need for an athletics track. At the moment, the recommendation is we don't need one based on our population usage, but we do need some form of a J track or some sort of track that we can look at. So sort of a modified type of arrangement. And then obviously we heard very strong from the ice sports going, we're at capacity, we can't get in, we need more space, we need to look at whether it's viable to have another ice sports arena somewhere in the district. District recommendations. As I said, I won't cover most of these, cover them, but they're the things that you've already pretty much heard. As I said, we look at Queenstown Squash Club. If Aotearoa project goes ahead, we need to look at location around that. Obviously, we talk about Valentine Road as a major youth sports field hub. Potential around community hub potential in the Eastern Corridor. And then obviously master plans for Jack Tewa Park, if we don't currently have potentially Pembroke or 3 parks or Hawea Domain. So there's a bit of planning work to go, what needs to go where, and that obviously will come through as part of the work that we're doing with the LTP moving forward.
So next steps, we've actually finalised, we've got a final draft now. So that was sent through from RSL last week. And what we'd like to do is now forward that out to the committee. So you've got an opportunity to read through the 151-page document and also provide feedback. So I will send out a form that you can go through and provide some feedback on what you think of the document. So we can have a look at adopting it in a committee meeting on the 8th of September. I guess the steer we'd like to get from the committee is, would you like another workshop once you've read the document, or would you be happy based on reading the document and providing that feedback and potentially making some of those changes, adopting it at the next meeting on the 8th of September? And now I can open up for questions.
Thanks, guys. Conscious of you guys have been listening for a while, so we'll hand it back to you in a minute, but we'll go over here to you.
I think I'm going to do it again. Indoor codes, it's supposed to be indoor courts on 5.1. So that's the thing I have a lot to say. Very excited. How do I tackle this? I think it's great. One of the big things I wanted to see was gapping the map. Map the gaps, working on that. Which I think, these colour codes really help illustrate it in a different way of where the deficits are. I would like to see skateboarding more prevalent. Is there anyone that doesn't have it's there mentioned, but it's below shooting, and shooting shows sort of the capability, but there's no sort of analysis around skateboarding facilities. Mainly because a lot of the kids in Hawea, and I'm not saying this from my own benefited from us, have been wanting a skating facility, and it's technically just a flat piece of concrete. What they're also doing is biking around with fishing rods. So they go on fishing, which is really fun. Not necessarily need to have strategy on that, but one of the things that it makes me think of is when I was doing a market analysis of Kiwis with Here Outdoors, we were going this whole, are you a tramper or are you a weekender? Are you this kind of person? And the nuance that we found in New Zealand is everyone's typically everything. We're a room of generalists, and the value of that is that, I play volleyball, but I also play hockey, and I've grown up playing football, and I play touch and literally every sport imaginable. So when I come to these strategies and I look at it more holistically to go, well, actually, I can see how we've got everything I need and that the football club needs more, lighting, or that communication is really helpful when you have those engagement with community groups who are all looking for their own needs, and then they get together and realize that everybody's looking for gym sports and the other stuff. So I guess the point being is that how do you feed the information back in a really tangible way? And it says, we've heard exactly what you wanted. Here's how everybody needs translates across the whole district, and here's what we've seen as some of the gaps and opportunities to reflect that, so people can stop saying it, as you've mentioned before. They're tired of saying the same thing time and time again. So how do we come back with this is what we've heard? Another question, no, maybe there's way too many questions in this. Is the IVL like facilities aspects any opportunity? I know that they're sort of pointing towards different user pays models. Well, you can talk about ancillary facilities around change rooms, other stuff. Is that an option?
Yes and no.
Right.
So where it's specifically related to tourism, yes.
Yeah.
If it's in a local resident area, for example, the answer would probably be no. However, if we're talking about some of our hubs, absolutely, visitors use and tourists use our hubs all the time. So yes, absolutely, there are conversations around that we're looking at. Certainly with the whole social infrastructure package, we're looking at where alternative funding can come from, and that will be presented as part of the LTP package. So there's multiple streams we're looking at, not only IVL, we're looking at obviously trust funding, philanthropic, a variety of other things to help support the delivery of these things. But yes, you're right.
Yeah.
What's your question? Sorry.
Oh, we're talking about JT and about the changing room facilities, and we're getting dribbles of some hope that there might be IVL funding towards public toilets or that kind of thing. So I was wondering if there's any ability to cross over to Expo Fund or any other ways of
So Simon's right. We could put an IVL lens over those facilities and apply for funding. And it's whether it meets the government of the day's criteria is the question.
Yeah, it's one of the options we've been. There's multiple options that we get at how we fund. So yes, if we meet the criteria, absolutely, we'll be looking at doing. And I see a lot of our places are used by tourism, by visitors, so why should we not? But again, it will depend on the criteria.
I know 11th of August, I've written it down for the Franklin Golf Course, which I'm excited about that conversation. Pattara is obviously having community issues and that's causing problems at the end of courts. When do we have that conversation out of curiosity?
We're just working through that. We had tentatively tagged September the 10th, I think it was, to bring a bunch of key topics back to you. We might need to visit some of those through the LTP steering group conversations earlier than later. Going to script a little bit about library strategies. Franklin Library might be another conversation that we might need to have earlier than the LTP, the September date. But certainly there are implications around Pattara about, do we build something new? Do we not? When do we build? Do we not build? Do we lease? Do we, so there will be a range of options there that will need to come back to this table.
Cool. I'll leave it there. But thank you for what you've done. I think it's great.
Thanks, Kenny. Evan?
Yeah, that's all we've got. I think the other thing I noticed is going through that original strategy for the report from 2018 is actually how many of those things have been done in that time. It's easy to think, oh yeah, we just sit here talking about stuff and nothing ever happens, but there's lots of things that have been done over that time, so it's really good.
There has been, you're right. We're still not quite where we should be, but certainly,
There's always more to do.
there's always more to do. And so I think the reality is the next period of time, I think there definitely needs to be a real focus on that investment where we can. If we can afford to do that, we'll look at how we do that with alternative partners, etc. But certainly there is, the increasing need that we're hearing from the sports organisations and recreational users who use our facilities is we want more of these. At the moment, they're happy, satisfaction's high with them, as you would have seen through the quality of life stuff, but we need more of them. It's a capacity issue, not a quality issue or what we're delivering issue.
Yeah. The other question I have is about, obviously, this one covers Queenstown Lakes and Central Otago, and when you're deciding where a facility might be best placed, it falls into one council or the other.
At the moment.
At the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, currently, then what happens to those discussions about who's paying out of their long-term?
Well, I think ultimately, once we sit down and kind of put a lens over the coastal stuff, take a macro view and say, okay, do we need a sports hub somewhere? And go, well, the best location would be from the racecourse. Then obviously that's a conversation that would be a recommendation that would come through the Oculus steering group, for better words, that will come back to the table here with all the different options of whether that's a good option, not option, pros and cons for it, etc. But I guess the purpose of this document is to provide, the high level guidance, and then there's a level of detail that will then fall out of that about specific locations or the document will have some of that stuff in there, but there will certainly be some more investigations around cross-boundary stuff, which is part of that policy conversation that we're
Whether
having.
if it's a sub-regional facility with the council whose area it's not in would be providing some kind of contribution.
There's the whole funding models is a whole nother conversation.
And then there's also, when we have national things like, there's talk again of having national sevens, rugby sevens back here. I know when that was here, lots of work was carried out on the rec ground across the way there. It was at a really high standard. When there's not that sort of national sub or regional level of use of it, it's harder to justify spending money on it, I guess, isn't it?
Ultimately, our perspective is that those events are probably the 5%, which is part of the pathway for formalised sport, particularly and opportunities and events and activity, and builds all those lovely things for us. And we need more of those, absolutely. Ultimately, when you build things, I guess the question is the cost element is what level do you go to? And that's one of the key things that we will, obviously always bring back to the table here with options.
I guess, it might be the top 5%, but it had a much bigger than 5% impact on the use of it by the community for the rest of the year. It was in a really good condition.
Yeah, same happens when we have international cricket. Obviously the standard of the wickets are a lot higher for Queensland Cricket Club.
Very good, thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Mine's a bit more of a process question. So this isn't something that we consult on or anything. It's just something we develop internally and get sign off by councillors. Is that?
So it's a document that we don't technically kind of own. We partner with.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's a partnership document, is probably the best way to put it. So by adopting it, essentially, if council wishes to adopt it, it's sort of saying, look, we agree with the concept. Well, sorry, not concept. We agree with the principles in here. We agree with sort of the recommendations. Obviously, that will then flow through to anything specific to our region that will come from the table here. But certainly, it's from a process point of view, the idea is to ensure there is adoption by both councils and by obviously Sport Otago's board, Sport New Zealand, that we're in agreement with the high level guidelines that give us a good framework to make investment decisions moving forward.
Cool. So I think that you asked a question about do we want a workshop, and my answer to that would be yes. I don't know who I'd say that to as a chair. I think that would be a good idea before it came. But that's just my opinion. Third thing, do we have one of these or can we have one of these for cultural facilities? And I know that's not your wheelhouse, but I'm like,
so that's
because I guess we have one of those or we eventually build it into this.
So as you're aware, we have obviously the creativity, culture and heritage strategy. One of the key pillars is around infrastructure.
Yeah.
And so therefore under that infrastructure pillar, we expect some work to be done around what do we actually need in this region. And that is, when I say region, it also involves Central Otago Council and obviously the HUI that was had recently, based on infrastructure, will come out with some ideas and thoughts around that. It's a piece of work that Marie and myself are kind of looking at how we manage pulling that together for council.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Just looking at the draft, it's got a lens of catering for the local population, maybe even the wider regional population. Just wondering whether there was a lens on hosting international or national events as part of the sporting facilities, and whether that's actually taken into account, or is it just what the local community needs?
You can answer that.
Yes and no. I guess from a steering group and understanding of what actually locally is needed, it was very much from a ground up. And I think the icing on the top is if you have got a cricket wicket there at QEC, for example, as then going to the national body and seeing what New Zealand Cricket's view is on that. And at the moment it's tier 3, I think. So it's quite a long way down the ranking. So I think it then becomes almost a conversation around council of what's your driver around high performance sport and the economic benefits of that, or having that
and the environment. And that comes with a dollar value and also an alignment with the national sporting organisation of whoever it is. So I think in terms of this, it's very much around community and activity for facilities for activity for general population of Queenstown Lake, Central Otago. And probably the one that wasn't in there was this alpine environment, so the ski fields and private enterprise. They can do what they want in terms of bringing in the elite. So, yeah, to be upfront, it was pretty much looking at it from a community basis and use.
Probably RSL did, so a lot of the sports have national facility strategies where they're determining how many 50-metre balls do we need in New Zealand, how many indoor courts do we need in New Zealand. So definitely that information informs what we do in our spaces, and that is also informed on certain events and activities occurring at international, national levels or regional levels. And so the indoor courts, for example, we're looking at going, we know the national bodies want to hold a national netball competition here or a national basketball competition here, for example. So therefore the facility built should actually be able to cater for that, or to a certain level that we can bring it up for that one-off event, for example. So it's finding that balance between overspeaking a facility in reality for a national or international event that you may or may not get once every 3 to 7 years, whatever it is, versus the base level of provision for our residents here and community use.
Yeah, I think one thing just adding to that was just around the high performance, so like a camp environment. So it doesn't need to be international level, but it's at a high enough standard that you could have an Australian rugby league team coming here and training over the summer for a period of time and having a game that's at that level. So there was some conversations around that, and
Which is what we do already. Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I
without our hubs.
probably think as a council, we need to consider what we're trying to achieve. Right? Because, you know, from, if it is just for grassroots needs inspiration. They need to see those regional tournaments at least being catered for here, because they get to a level as kids and they want to compete. And if we can't host those here, then there's a significant travel distance to get to those other locations, which may actually then mean it's not equitable for our community to actually go to those events. So I think from that perspective anyway, we maybe need to look at our next tier rather than just catering for social sports, but getting competitive. But you know, obviously internationals is another story altogether.
The other thing, though, talking about that, is that we do have some, particularly for children, some national type competitions here. But we do also have some challenges here with our grass growth.
Yeah.
And we do. I don't think that's recognised in other parts of New Zealand. They think we can just come here and play on the grass and it's going to be all right, but it's sometimes it's suboptimal.
Yeah, yep, absolutely.
Simon, you guys all put down with your past questions? Yeah. I've just realised the Wanaka Community Board was invited to this, so I just wanted to check, is anyone online?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So John was online.
okay.
Wellington.
I can't do it.
Yeah, I'm online. I've been listening.
Oh, no. Did you guys have, did anyone online have questions? Oh,
Not about the first bit of the presentation, the detailed section that we haven't got to yet. I've got some questions about that, but
would you? Okay,
Yeah.
do you want to?
Once they see the draft, I think it's probably best for them to digest the draft, and then they'll be able to come back to another workshop with more detail. I think is probably what they're asking.
And okay, is that all right, John?
yeah, that was fine. I was my initial concern in the detailed draft was the issue of sports fields in Wanaka. There's clearly identified shortage already, but looking at the detail, it still says subject to further needs analysis, and seems to be on the same priority as additional sports fields in the Wakatipu. So that would just be my concern, that there's already a clearly identified shortage of sports fields in the Upper Clutha, and it just that needs to be, I think, just a bit of priority in that area.
Sorry, just for clarity, the document that was sent out was the previous strategy, not the new draft strategy. So yes, John, back in 2018, we did need to do some further work, and we have done a lot of work since then. So you will see the new draft come out. I'll hopefully get that out in the next day or two.
Thank you, Simon. That was my misunderstanding of that document.
Just clarity around that.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Kathy, did you have any questions?
Kia ora team, thanks for that. I'm in the car but I have been listening in. This is one piece of the bigger community space and facilities puzzle. Obviously, this is focused on the sport rec play area. So, I mean, that's why I'm tuning in, and I'm just really keenly aware that this data is really useful, but it still addresses one piece of a larger puzzle. So I'm keen to get on with using the data in terms of decision making and committing to things in the LTP. So no doubt those opportunities will come.
Well, no questions on this. Just can you guys cover off the next steps? I just put these. I think you got a bit of a steer about the workshop.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Awesome. But you're going to send out a form.
we'll send it. Well, what we'll do is we'll send out a draft with some prompting questions for you. But please just give us your feedback in any shape and way that you want to give us feedback around that, either in advance, so we'll be prepared if we come back for a further workshop, which I think we want to have a discussion around. So I think there's the feedback session from councillors to give us some feedback on the draft, and then I think we need to look at booking another workshop in, which means we might push out the September date for adoption. So I think that probably is the better way to maybe do it, just to make sure. So there is also, because again, we haven't shared the draft with back to our key stakeholders. We've gone back to them what they've told us, but the whole lot we want to go back to our key stakeholders with, obviously sporting community and wider, to sort of say, hey, here's what we've heard. This is the recommendations. We've pulled it all together. This is the draft. Please provide some commentary, and we'll be able to pull that information together as well from then, and be able to present that back to you at the workshop. Cool. We will be using a lot of the information recommendations as part of the LTP as well. We're trying to work in parallel on a few things at the moment, so it will help inform, I guess, what the long list looks like, but also what our potentially a prioritized 10 list would look like as well.
I was just going to say, it makes a lot of sense to have it all sorted and as a guiding document through the plan. I mean, you already said it, so I need to overlay it. But great. It's great work. It's really cool. Very well done.
Yeah, and thank you to Sport Otago for helping with that. I mean, they're a key part with us. And we wouldn't do what we're doing in this region without them, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, to comment on that, it'd be great to have more engagement with you guys as well, because this, it's quite an important document for us, because we've been asking, I guess, what are we lacking here and how far behind are we, and what this review does, how does it keep up with growth? Because that's all we talk about here. So, it's really important to keep that relationship going, because that data is really critical to our LTP and how we make decisions there.
Yeah, we did actually have a conversation recently around whether we actually bring Port Otago back to kind of give you a bit of an overview of everything they do.
Well, I mean, it fills in the knowledge gap, I guess, of the wider, sport infrastructure in the Lower South Island for us.
So we may look at trying to schedule something before the end of the year, Friday.
Oh, sorry, we do have a late question.
No. Following from that, how often do you do is there do you do it every 5 years in your strategy? Or?
Ideally every 3 years. We had a little bit of COVID in the middle. So that's why we've obviously now got to the strategy of we need to get this done, particularly for this next investment period.
And I think out of this, the draft when you see it is 2030, so redoing it before the next LTP timeframe. So it's kind of lines up to feed into that next LTP planning phase.
Okay, cool.
All right, great. Okay, we might close that item on.
Sport
Might close that
Otago
item on.
would be
Oh,
happy
sorry.
to partner with council further. I'm just saying Sport Otago would fully support more partnership with council, right, James?
Great. And probably just note, just probably for the record that Kathy is actually the chairperson. Yeah, as well. So,
Thanks,
Kathy. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, John.
So, the next item we've got here is a review of the Queensland Lakes District Council Library Strategy 20 to 30, draft refresh 2031. Got the two Sues, Sugwa and Susan.
focus online.
I'll do it.
Perfect, yeah.
Right, we're all here.
Thank you.
Take it away.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you for having us today. I'm Sue Gwilym. I think I've met everybody here. Nice to see you again. I'd like to introduce Sue Sutherland, who is our library consultant. She's been engaged to undertake a refresh of the Queenstown Lake. Sue developed the original strategy way back in 2020, which seems a long time ago, and she brings a really strong understanding of both our library services and the unique needs of the Queenstown Lakes district. The refresh represents a natural midpoint in the strategy's lifespan and an opportunity to consider how our libraries continue to respond to a growing and changing district. Importantly, this isn't a strategy refresh because the strategy failed. It's a strategy refresh because it's been substantially delivered. And at the same time, the last 6 years have brought a significant change, including population growth, evolving community needs, rapid advances in technology and digital services, and increasing challenges around access to trusted information. And we've been required all along to continue to adapt and evolve. This work's particularly timely as Queenstown and Wanaka Library celebrate 150 years of service in this year and 2027. For a century and a half, our libraries have adapted to meet the changing needs of their communities while remaining trusted places of learning, connection and access to information. And as we mark this important milestone, we have an opportunity and a responsibility to ensure we are making the right decisions now so our libraries can continue to serve future generations for the next 150 years. Since the strategy was adopted in 2020, library use has grown significantly. Physical and digital borrowing has increased from 490,000 checkouts in 2020. These are our KPIs, to 755,000 in 25-26, which is an increase of 54%. Annual physical visits across the 8 library branches have increased by more than half, rising from 245,000 per year to almost 400,000 per year. That's across the 8 branches in the district. Those figures demonstrate both the value our communities place on our library services and the increasing demand created by growth across the district. Today, Sue's going to take you through the findings of the review and the proposed direction for the strategy refresh for the next 5 years. Thank you, Sue.
Okay. Thanks. It's good to be here. Just a little bit about me, because you might wonder who's this person who's, flown in and worked with the libraries. I've had a lifetime of in local and central government. Key points: 10 years as library manager at Christchurch City from the mid-90s to 2005. 6.5 years as the Deputy Chief Executive and Director of the National Digital Library at the National Library, when it was still a government department in its own right. And for the last 15 years, I've provided consultancy services here in Australia, developing strategy, library design, and service and operational reviews, and worked in the associated community facilities, museums, and so on. So I've been around quite a while in the library world. As Sue said, it was always the intention to do a review at the halfway point, and as well as look at the achievements, which I've documented in the review and refresh report. I should apologise in a way if you've got 3 documents really: the review and refresh report, which was the kind of findings, how that's translated into the refresh strategy, and then a 2-pager for a strategy at a glance, which is meant to make it easy to kind of get the key points. So we looked at changes in the society, trends in the library sector, and so on. And because this was not a new strategy, consultation was limited to 3 focus groups: interviews with relevant staff from other council departments and library staff. And we also looked at recent surveys that both the library had conducted and one that was a national survey that the Public Libraries of New Zealand had conducted looking at outcomes. So we looked at that material. What came across strongly in the community feedback from the focus groups was how much people valued the libraries. One person who'd moved to the district without any family support would come to the Frankton Library just to be with others. She would read the paper, talk to the librarian, sometimes take out a book, but mostly just wanting a place where she could meet others informally. A high school student valued it as a place he could study and be with his friends at the same time. It was clear that people saw the library as a place that belonged to the community, the main limitations being the space and opening hours. The face-to-face support of the library staff was very important, especially as people are pushed more and more to doing things online. The interviews with council staff were really enlightening and interesting. They were complimentary about the library service ethic and their willingness to respond to community needs. But proactively planning for population growth was seen as essential, and they emphasised the need for evidence-based decision-making in a time of tight resources. So looking at outcome measures as well as evidence of growth and use. And a fuller account of the comments from staff are in the refresh and review report. The outcome of the research, analysis, discussions and thinking were 6 strategic priorities for development, and they're on the board there. Libraries as essential social infrastructure, planning for growth, strengthening communities, 1 district libraries, professional library staff and demonstrating value. The council's infrastructure, one of the things I did do was look at several of the council's existing strategies and policies, the long-term plan and so on. And in the council's infrastructure strategy, it does identify the importance of community facilities, including libraries, as vital in what makes the district a great place to live, along with the amazing outdoor environment and the essential amenities of transport, waste, water, etc. To help address the shortfall of space, the strategy has proposed a development plan which covers a 20 to 30 year timeframe. And although the library strategy is for a further 5 years, the planning for any extended rebuild or potential new libraries needs to start now if the council is to have sound business cases on which to make decisions at long-term planning cycles. An indicative timeline is provided to help make clear the scale of development needed. Clearly, over that period, opportunities may arise and priorities change, but the need remains over the long term. As the libraries grow, so too will the staffing complement. Libraries have grown organically. 10 years ago, Queenstown and Wanaka operated relatively independently, serving quite different communities. Frankton was introduced in 2018, and while there is some consolidation around collection management, it's the right time to look at the operating model for efficiencies and effective management. Centralising the management of some functions does not mean losing the uniqueness of the different libraries, and nor does it mean centralising to one location. But as staff numbers increase to meet growth and demand, a more streamlined organisation with clear responsibilities and accountabilities will prepare the library team for any changes that might come its way, including potential local government amalgamation as one instance. The strategy itself remains relevant, and if you look at the strategy, the document itself, and you looked at the one from 20 years ago, it has the same framework. The 4 focus areas of I think I've known them having worked on them all the time, but the four focus areas are literacy and language, learning for life, connected, vibrant communities, and equity and access. So they remain relevant. There have been some changes to the outcome statements to better reflect the focus for the next 5 years, but essentially the areas are still relevant to what the library needs to do. Each focus area has a range of actions, and these will be achieved over the 5-year life of the strategy. So once the committee has had its say, and it has adopted the strategy or a revised strategy from what we see today. An implementation plan with realistic measures will be developed so that that will guide the development over the next 5 years. When you look at the strategy, you think, oh God, that's a lot to achieve, you know, but it's over a 5-year period. Why do libraries matter? Well, that's a lovely picture of the Glenorchy Library, and even this tiny Glenorchy Library of 28 square metres is valued by that community. I had a very interesting conversation with the librarian who works there. I've worked in the library sector for over 50 years and have seen them transition from book lending places to places with people at the centre. I have a lovely photograph of myself as an 18-year-old standing outside the Wanaka Public Library, which was a small individual building somewhere on the main street, and that was the public library. So from that time to now, they've transitioned from book lending places to places with people at the centre, places for learning, meeting, creating and debating that strengthen civic participation and democracy. Important principles underpin the library service: freedom of information and the freedom to read, equity of access, diversity and inclusivity, and sustainability. And they are one of the council's best regarded services. That was one of the comments from the focus groups. So we really do want to hear from you. There is a lot in the documents, but the A3 strategy at a glance gives you a synthesis of what libraries will work on for the next 5 years. But have we got it right?
That's it. Awesome. Great presentation. So maybe I'll just begin.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Just really interested from a national level and with your experience, are you seeing our district doing similar things to around the country in terms of growth and use of libraries, or are we unique? And what are the challenges and opportunities you see for our district?
Well, in terms of are you doing the same as other places, you're doing with the resources the library has and the staff they've got, they're doing a great job. I think that you should be very proud of what they're achieving. Are they growing in other places? Yes, library use is growing. I mean, the survey was very interesting. Many councils are facing financial pressures as you are, and your circumstances are pretty unique, really. The only other place that's probably grown as fast is the Selwyn district, and they recently developed a new library in Rolleston. It's about 2,200 square metres to serve that town. But your circumstances are really unique, and so that places some unique pressures. But it's interesting. I mean, when I first started in the consultancy business back 15 years ago, so that's sort of 2010, the whole talk was about, oh, libraries are a thing of the past, everybody's going to read an and, you know, and information is ubiquitous. Well, information is ubiquitous, but what's happened since then is it's become, information online has become untrustworthy in many cases, and it's become even more invidious, if you like, since AI. So AI delivers you search results that you never used to get. It's quite changed the whole nature of search, but ensuring that people don't just take, the thing at the front of mind. So, libraries are still delivering to their communities, and more they are community spaces, and often situated with other community type facilities. So
Is the new Wellington Library, is it the gold standard?
Is it what, sorry?
Is it the gold standard?
Well, the new Wellington Library is, it's a central city library, and it's pretty staggering. And yes, I'm sure if they were trying to do it now, they wouldn't do it. But it really is, and it has had an incredible boost to the downtown Wellington. It really has. And when the Christchurch developed Turanga, I wasn't involved in that because that happened after the earthquakes. But that really provided an anchor in that part of the city for people to come. So libraries are really placemaking as well as, you know, community making, because they can absolutely, you know, change the feel and nature of space. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I love libraries. My question was going to be the same about that Wellington model, because actually I think it was the creativity who the lady talked about the Wellington library and how they made the decision to, you know, go big and go central rather than decentral. I don't know if decentralized, but have multiple smaller ones. And I guess, has that been considered here? Because I'm looking at that 2-page document, which I'm excited about. It looks like there might be one in the Eastern Corridor and Southern Corridor eventually. But I guess has it been weighed up whether we do one major big one? Simon, give him another.
Just so that you know, I have worked closely with Simon on because he has been working away on this as well.
Yeah.
And in the fuller document, you'll see that there is an option. So there are probably two options. One, you could just build a big Monty in Franklin and not, you know, or you could have Franklin as a hub and have smaller libraries. And I think the options report on that is one of the pieces of development that needs to be done so that you can work out what is the better option.
Yeah.
And some of that depends on what other facilities, such as community facilities, are needed in those two areas. So that's that. And then I think with Wanaka as well, I've suggested there are possibly two options. One is to build a big Monty of the library somewhere in the 3 parks, maybe near them. And the other is to build a smaller version there that would serve as the major library in Wanaka for people in the surrounding Luggett and so on, but retain the existing library and refocus its what its services are to still retain a library presence in the centre of the town. So those two pieces of work need work done on them. And I think the purpose of having a plan, and I've spaced it out over 20 years, that might be unrealistic, you know, but the purpose of having a plan or an indicative plan is so that when it comes to long-term planning time, you have a properly properly done business case that gives you options and costs so that you know what you're making the decisions on.
Yeah, no.
But without that sort of forward plan, it's you know, it just keeps moving.
Yes, 100%. No, thank you. That's useful. And I don't necessarily have a preference either. I haven't been to the Christchurch one, haven't been to the Wellington one yet. But it's just I was interested to get your thoughts on that. Just one logistical thing with the draft. Are we able to see a tracked changes copy to see what changes have been made?
That's a good question. I can certainly provide you with we can provide you with the existing strategy.
Yeah.
And I can have I still got a tracked changes version? I can do a tracked changes version without any difficulty.
Okay. I think that would be useful because sometimes it's useful to know what changed. Yeah.
The main things are really
on that.
For instance, expanded horizons through reading and debate. The outcome there previously was something about the power of imagination through the power of story. And we think that that is still important, but even more important is at the moment really is helping people get a broader understanding of what's going on in the world and to be confident about the information that they might be seeing. So the focus areas remain the same, but the emphasis has changed slightly. But I'd be more than happy to do a track changes version for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, just commend on how you've presented it because I think it makes it, you know, not too, but it makes it more digestible. And I think, like, you know, that bottom right-hand chart showing populations and how better servicing is again helpful to understand the thinking behind it. It's a really good way to present it. I would reflect on the fact that the social cohesion bit, because they always talk about, you know, it used to be the public house and then it turned into the pub. So I always see like the library as a living room of the community. because I think, outside of the place where everyone gets drunk, but, the more that I've, been in this position, the more I've recognized the cultural issue of everybody being so fragmented and isolated and not having that cohesion, part. And I think my experience at the libraries they've been quite at the forefront of a lot of it and been very flexible to address the needs that people have. So I've been quite impressed with how it's evolved in order to best cater for the community and whatever it is. And I think, that's reflected in this document, but it's reflected in what's already been done as well. I think, I'm tremendously proud of the work that's done. And I think it's, I don't have any notes in that respect. I guess the only advocacy would be that, getting more opening hours and hardware so that we can do it for longer. But just to commend the work that's already been done.
Come back to you.
So waiting for you.
Waiting.
Oh, sorry, please, you're going to come back.
No, I said no. Sorry, no, I didn't. Sorry.
Right. There's a couple of references to mobile libraries on the documentation. How good are they? How effective are they at providing all the other things that libraries provide other than just checking out books in terms of the community spaces and whatever else?
Right, well, the mobile library services have changed over the years as well. So some people, probably not in this room, but there used to be a mobile van that came around with books that came from what's called the Country Library Service, and then libraries have used large buses to take their books to the community. The vans have got smaller. Some of them are electric, probably not such a good idea in this community, but and they bring books, but they also bring other resources. So they often have Wi-Fi, they're Wi-Fi enabled in case the area you go to hasn't got good Wi-Fi, and they take programs. So they can go to an area, set up, usually if they can find a community hall or something like that, so that so they're not like the old buses where you might go on and sit on the bus and do your thing. They usually are vans that are mobile and you take the resources to them, including the books. But Sue, you might have other comments about.
I was just going to say they also take council services. The one in Winton is the leased van, and they take. You can do job registration, any council business that you want to do in the van, which is a really good model, I think. Yeah.
We don't currently have a mobile van or anything here, do we?
Sorry, what was it?
We don't currently have a mobile.
We don't. It was in the previous SAP strategy, but it was removed, and we've brought it back again. Simply because our rural communities are growing.
Yeah.
Keeping up with that growth, I think, is one way of connecting, but also connecting not just libraries but council services as well.
And it seems easier to buy one vehicle than build 4 or 5 libraries.
Yeah, well, certainly, I'm imagining, should you ever decide that you're going to have new libraries in those growing suburbs of the Eastern Corridor and the Southern Corridor, they're well down the track, I'd imagine, and so it may be that in the interim you can, for people who find it difficult to get to Frankton, that might be a way of doing that. But I think you're also in discussions with Central Otago District to see whether there's a value in a shared mobile, so that it might be yours for 2 or 3 weeks and theirs for 2 weeks.
I don't know how the model, and even whether it go ahead, but that wasn't raised at that one meeting. So
well, that brings me to my next question, because I know there is current sharing of services with Central Otago, so I guess the intention is that that'll continue even under a new strategy or an updated strategy. There's no change to that.
We share our resources, our physical resources, and we get a lot of people, particularly in Wanaka, who work in Cromwell, and they come to Wanaka, they work in Wanaka, and they borrow the library simply because it's open. Borrow from the library, but there's a lot of shared catalogue, aren't you? A shared catalogue, yes.
Yeah, I think it's really good.
Yes, it is. We find that you can just walk into any of the 15 branches, so it really extends our reach.
Yeah.
As well.
It seems, I don't know how it is to operate for you, but it just seems to be pretty seamless as a user.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the things that Christchurch did after the earthquakes was, money was tight, and they got the Rotary clubs to sponsor the band. So that you may find, financial ways to make that more possible.
Any further questions? Yeah,
No, that's good. Thank you very much.
So, can I have one?
Yeah, you go for it.
Thank you. You mentioned management efficiencies, and in the document it talks about how the branch managers are quite stretched because they are doing strategy, governance, management of staff, and operations as well. Is your recommendation to elevate that management level up so that there's actually someone that's overseeing the whole strategy and delivering that strategy?
Well, Sue, of course, is the libraries manager, and as the district libraries manager, she oversees the strategy. But I think, what's proposed is a kind of a hub and spoke model, which I think is certainly what I understand from Simon, one of the ways to go forward. So the Frankton Library, for instance, each library has smaller libraries that are kind of attached to it. So, and there is support of those libraries. But in the three larger libraries, the libraries managers still have to, do quite a lot of face-to-face. So they are stretched. I wouldn't like to say should they be elevated until you've had a look at the review, but I suspect they will be.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's more about, there are a lot of background processes in the library world that need to happen. All of the collection, purchase, and circulation, and all of that is needs overview and oversight and managing, and all of the digital services and so on, the library management system, which is, you're on Kotui, aren't you? Yeah, which is a national service. But all of that has, grown over time. And yes, the libraries, the district library, the team leaders, I think you call them, I'm not sure what their titles, branch managers, they probably need staff underneath in order for them to have time to, sort of more over that and to manage and coordinate.
So it's not changing the structure of management, it's more delegating some more authority to the staff so that those branch managers can
That's correct.
work
Yes,
more
yeah, and
proactively.
to make sure that that you have kind of accountability and oversight of some of those, the big functions. So, and it might be that you'll have, I don't know, one operations manager that's looking after all the circulation activities and making sure the books get around. I mean, I don't know what the answer is, but I think it's time to make sure that you're working in the most efficient and effective way, and it's not just a matter of adding, every time you need some more staff, add three of this and three of that, and so it's a matter of looking to see where the need is currently and how that will be managed.
I understand that. Great, thank you.
Okay. I'm just conscious of the time, and we've got a couple of people online. I want to check whether they've got any questions, and you've got one more slide about.
Yeah, just that says.
So maybe we'll just quickly go online and just check with John and Kathy.
Yeah. So evidently the final strategy is to come to you on the 20th of October.
Okay.
That's what I was told. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. So that's the next thing.
Yeah, that's it.
So I'll just check with Kathy and John whether there are any questions.
Hi. No questions for me. I just want to. Is that a bad echo?
No, it's fine.
Okay, cool. Just want to endorse not only the work that libraries and library staff do in their spaces, but they really contribute to placemaking outside the library walls. And going forward, it's just an area that I would love to see continued to be supported. It's the community development mahi, often in partnership with other community groups like Community Link or other social and environmental groups. And it's just great to see library staff with their resources out and about at places like the AMP show and the Summer Days picnics. I just think they have a really outsized impact for the current level of investment. So when we think about assets and staffing in particular going forward, let's just always remember that the people are what make that mighty happen and make it special.
Okay, thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
John?
Yeah, I would very much like to just support what Kathy said. She beat me to it, really. What I would also like to say is it's very interesting to compare where we are now to where we were under the Van Uden Adam Feely Council, where there was a seriously retrenchment of library services proposed. And the public pushed back quite hard on that, despite some online discussion that libraries were yesterday's technology and not necessary anymore. So I'm just so pleased to see the service our Wanaka Library, the QLDC libraries provide to our community, fully supportive of the new strategy. The only thing I would say is I'd be a little cautious of comparing the Wakatipu to the Upper Clutha in terms of having a library in downtown Queenstown and Frankton. I struggle to see that value, that comparison in Wanaka, because Three Parks is downtown. Having a library in where it's currently existing and one in Three Parks, to me, makes no sense at all. There's this perception that Three Parks is out of town. Three Parks is part of the centre of town. So I'll just be a little cautious of using that analogy, comparing in town and out of town on that basis. But
All right, thank you, John. I think we're taking note of that.
Yep.
I think that's going to, we're probably well over time, so I was just going, I think we're probably so I just want to say thank you for that presentation, with some information. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Those all the library people in the back. That's support team. Moral support. Next. So we've got Christine and Jenny delivering Queenstown District Council planning with strategy. Just letting you know that they've got it was switching the time a little bit, so just
Okay, great. Thanks, Dave. Good morning, everyone. I'm Christine from the Parks Planning team, and I've got Principal Planner Jeannie with me here today as well. The purpose of this is an initial conversation about QLDC's first ever play strategy that we're delivering in-house. We'd like to share our approach and welcome any feedback on it and about our engagement as well. It's a first strategy, so there might be an opportunity to review it in the next 12 to 24 months as well. The goals with this strategy to inform our investment by resourcing and financing play appropriately, to enable, prioritise and distribute play equitably across our open space network, and to provide detailed play guidance to support planning and design. So why we're doing this strategy, we do already have a parks and open spaces strategy, which looks at ensuring we have the right amount of land and spaces to develop play. And within that strategy, there's an action plan, and one of those items was to deliver the play spaces strategy. We also have a situation where we've got lots and lots of new playgrounds coming online through new developments. We've had more in the last few years than we've had in the decades prior. So we want to make sure that they're meeting the whole community or the whole catchment's needs, and not just the immediate development. And we also want to be able to look at the gaps in our existing network as well through this strategy, which may also mean considering retiring play spaces as well, or turning them into something else. So yeah, lots of examples over the last few years where it would have been useful to have a strategy, just having clearer guidance for developers and our own project managers to make sure they meet the needs of the community, and also making sure our decision making was a bit more data driven. For example, Burton Park, 980 people under 19, and they didn't have a park playground in that area, compared to St Omar, which has got 50 people living in this area under 19, and that had been prioritised before Merton. So making sure we're incorporating data into our decision making. The context of this play strategy that we're doing is play infrastructure on recreation reserves for informal and unstructured outdoor play. So that includes playgrounds, quiet spaces within or next to playgrounds, nature play, hoops, half courts, and roller sports like pump tracks and scooter paths and half pipes. It's not for more organised sports like rugby fields, netball, tennis courts. It's not private land like Chipmunks, Site Trampoline, Remarkables Park Market Playground. It's not Ministry of Education sites. We're not looking at the streetscapes and road corridor and bus stops and that kind of thing. And at this stage, we have talked to libraries and sports and rec, but we've kept it as a park-specific focused play network strategy at this point. Maybe in a future place, there's a need for a community and services play strategy, but that's not this strategy at this point. So we're focusing only on the recreation network because we want to keep it sort of targeted to resolving the key themes that came out of our business case about what we needed from a strategy, which was to be able to give info to developers and our own project managers about delivering our new play spaces. And we also need to know how to prioritise the renewals program and ensure our funds and investment is working as effectively as it can. So it is a bit more of a targeted strategy compared to others that you might see around Australia and New Zealand. Other ones come from more of a health driver, how can we get our kids moving more, or people in general, how can we get them moving more on their commutes to work and school and that kind of thing. And other ones focus or include indoor and all weather opportunities for play, as well as activation and programming, and other strategies in working with the private sector to provide play. We do somewhat kind of, as we're working with developers on delivering a lot of play, and we're open to external funding opportunities. So we touch on that, but it's not as broad as covering all of those topics. Just other recent examples are in the last couple of years, Invercargill City Council and the CODC, Gisborne and Parramatta in near Sydney in Australia. From our analysis so far, we can see quite clearly that we've got skill-based play is the biggest type of play that we're providing for so far. We don't have much imaginative, sensory and nature play, which is on the slide there, and some sort of descriptions and examples of what those are. And we can see that the juniors, the 6 to 12 year age group, are best catered for, followed by early childhood, which is a long way behind, and then teenagers, which is the least catered for in our district. So the scope of the document, we want to keep it to a relatively concise, strategic format, intro, vision, objectives, and what play elements we'd like for each play type. And a decision tree about how to prioritise what, where in the network we're going to put our investment, and then also a snapshot of the demographics and our current play gaps. So this would align with the QLDC Parks and Open Spaces strategy that we already have, and the QLDC Future Parks Provision Plan, and there's also a QLDC policy from many years ago about ensuring we use the playground equipment and surfacing standards and are compliant with those. Process-wise, we've already got a working draft and have done a lot of the analysis. We have reached out to iwi for their input, and we have shared an internal working document within QLDC with key departments, and we're happy to share that, within the next couple of weeks once we've got a little bit more feedback. We would plan to do a 4-week public consultation starting at the end of August and through the month of September. We can potentially organise drop-in sessions or keep things quite targeted to interested groups. We are open to any suggestions about that. At our concept and detailed design level, we do communicate with the local communities when we're doing that more detailed work, or this strategy is a bit more high level, so it might not be really targeted at school children and that type of thing at this stage. We have spoken with Health New Zealand and they're open to other ideas, suggestions. Yeah, did you want to add any extra context about the amount of playgrounds that we're dealing with, or we're good? Otherwise, open to questions.
Yeah, I think what
Sorry, go Jane.
just I did a rough tally up of all the playgrounds that we have taken on from developers in the last 5, 6, 7 years, and it's like 12 to 15. You can probably all think of where they are in your local areas. And when I first started over 10 years ago, it was one every few years, and now we're getting more and more, and with particularly with these fast track consents, they're proposing multiple reserves with multiple elements in them. So we really want to be more strategic about, is this the right fit for our community? Does it fill gaps, or is it just rolling out the same playgrounds across the district? Really interesting, the analysis around who do we provide for, and I've got teenagers now, we go to playgrounds anymore, and what does that age group do? Do we cater for them? I think we're probably quite a question marks, and how do we more in the driving seat? And when we do have probably an opportunity that other districts don't have, where we do have a lot of developers going, hey, we've got these. They have quite big budgets sometimes because of the density and the number of dwellings that they're doing. They actually want to provide something really cool, but they're not looking at it from a network-wide perspective. They just want something nice with their developments. How do we get more in the driver's seat? I think we've probably, from scratch, we've delivered maybe 2 or 3 new playgrounds from council, whereas, it's 5 times that from the developers. So, yeah, it's a really cool, interesting space, and there's a lot of amazing knowledge out there with a lot of suppliers and consultants, but how do we guide developers ourselves and our own work program to start meeting some of those other demographic needs?
Okay.
Very cool, very excited to see it. A few points, wharfs and pontoons, how do they fit in the play space?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Very popular.
Yeah.
Right.
All those teenagers.
Yeah.
Looking at sort of the play elements matrix, and I was like, there's a lot of water play that's not necessarily in here, but I think about teenagers, they're always jumping off the wharf, they're always hanging out on pontoons. A big part of it. For me, I wrote play does not equal playgrounds. For me, teenagers are underserved massively, and it's apparent in Hawea. There's a lot of teenagers, they have bikes, but they can't drive into Wanaka, so nothing we build in Wanaka is going to serve them. They're breaking into houses and doing dumb stuff because they're trying to kill time. Like I said, the thing that's there for them is fishing. That's to be the only thing, but that's out of an absence of anything else. It stops at 19. So I thought, I just think it's kind of sad to think that we stopped playing at 19. I think there's a lot of people from 19 to 85 that should be playing. And I think the play strategy should go, how are we interacting with adults and seniors, and how are we sort of creating social cohesion through opportunities to interact. I do think I really like the imaginative stuff, like hammocks and interactive art, or just other things that really build it. But I do think that, there is a huge missing piece that feels like the infrastructure for the other stuff. So play is not about kids, it's not about playgrounds. But what we're doing with the strategy, I think is fundamental to how we grow in a way that's very good. So love it.
I'll go with you first, man. I'll come back to you.
Take your first.
Oh,
Or
sorry.
we can just have your pen up.
You said go to her, but you're looking.
I said go. I said go. Yeah.
Oh, me, okay, all right.
Sorry.
So Matt,
Oh, did I? Sorry, my mistake.
MW, we're tricky couple. All right, I'm going to follow up a little bit on Cody's age-related question. How does exercise equipment fit into this? So in one of the photos you have. No, but it's still play, like and it does serve, and I do think it would do a little bit for that teenage group as well as adults.
We've got it listed fitness modules under teenagers and
Oh, cool.
beyond. There in the skill-based physical strength and movement. But yeah, that does extend right through to.
Yeah, no, that's cool, because I do think that's an area that potentially we're kind of lacking in this district that we could kind of grow on. And I know that you've said that not this time, but next time, but I do think it's something that we should try and get ahead of the game. And this came out of Sky came and talked to us. I can't remember who was there, but incorporating play into transport modes in terms of, and so you mentioned bus stops, and let's just put gondola stops in with bus stops. But I'm kind of like, how do we incorporate that? Because where I'm specifically thinking is Ladies Mile, where we're just about to develop big and they really want to emphasise public transport. How do we get those developers thinking that we need to kind of marry them up, not necessarily have them, but think about those in their public transport space? Is this somewhere that we could potentially bring it in now? Or it's too high basket?
I guess it depends on who is maintaining those assets. That's another part of this equation.
Yeah, okay.
Where we need to be a bit more savvy about what we're accepting.
Yeah.
Because if we take on 10 playgrounds this year, in 10 years' time, we've got 10 playgrounds to renew or to maintain and to replace. So I think we do have to kind of ensure that we're being strategic about not the assets that we're taking on, can we afford it in the future, or are we better, rather than having a lot of play equipment just hypothetically scattered throughout, are we better to target, reserves that we manage where we're initially sort of starting to get the formula right.
Yeah.
But there's also nothing to stop on private areas. Developers also using this as a guide to go, oh, look, if you want to do something, then these are the gaps.
Yeah.
This would be well used. Sorry, just completely.
How does that work? Because you mentioned the St. Omar Park, which is a really interesting one, and then obviously I've been very involved in Burton Park as well, and the difference. So how does that work? Because there's a park there, will it always be replaced, or would it get to the point where we're like, actually, given we've got the big playgrounds on the waterfront, do we still need a park there? And so Simon's doing his eyes again. Obviously, you guys have thought about this already, but it's kind of an interesting one.
In our decision tree draft that we've got so far, we've also got the option for mobile or temporary play. So while we a lot of renewals, they come to the end of their life for safety reasons, and if an area is going to grow or change, or we want something temporary, we could do that as well, temporary or mobile play.
Okay.
So you can get lots of options in that space. So we're definitely considering requiring play spaces in this strategy.
Okay, cool. All right. Thank you. It looks super interesting.
And maybe not just retiring, but mixing it up. Changing the demographic that it's servicing, as opposed to the swings are broken, put some more swings in.
It's not replacing
like North Lake is a good example. It's this big flat concrete area, barbecue pit, and a pump track, and then some basic. But you would need to replace it for 40, 50, 60 years, easy. It's different to playground equipment.
Can I ask just one specific thing to McBride Park? You might not know about what's happening with the slide. I need to send an email, but it's all it looks like it has been assessed as someone's doing his eyebrows.
You got to think about
I think it's part of the long-term plan investment.
Okay, anyway, I'll take that bit off. I'll take that one off.
No, definitely, please send it through.
I didn't hear that specific thing. We'll go to I'm aligned this time. Man, you get a question.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm really interested to know what the criteria is for, or how we decide who we cater for in terms of age groups, and also equity around different areas of the district. Obviously, the community associations have a lot of influence, and those that are more active and noisier tend to get, renewals or whatever it might be, and those that are a little bit quieter don't. So just wondering how we manage the criteria around who we cater for and how we decide who we cater for to ages, and how we decide who gets what around the district to make sure it's equitable.
We really want to work towards having each catchment area providing for everything, providing for all age groups. So the one playground might not be able to fully deliver all those play types and for all age groups, but if within the same catchment area we can provide for all of that, that's what we'd like to see. So in the eastern corridor, the southern corridor. Yeah.
Okay.
So can I just add, so you'll be aware of the growth projection sort of improvements. We would like to use that to more directly inform investment for council, and also guiding developers to sort of, anticipate where the younger age groups are, or the older, and those sorts of things too.
Yeah.
So that would help be a good measure to sort of say what are the demographics telling us, as opposed to I like that in the brochure, so I'm going to put that in.
And I guess the other question in terms of like teenagers, we know that we're not catering for teenagers in these play spaces. Is that a strategic reason? Is there it's just historically been the case because you build playgrounds suitable for young audiences?
I don't think it's no reason other than it probably just hasn't been on people's radar to provide for those hoops and half pipes and things like that teenagers might be more interested in.
Probably in that strategy.
Yeah.
So are you looking for a steer from us, or are you going to go out for consultation around this first?
Any insights, or it seems like providing right up for seniors and acknowledging that in the strategy is something that we should potentially incorporate. There are things like artwork, smaller walking circuits, patong, that kind of thing that caters to those kind of age groups. So that's the kind of thing that we could include in this table as well, and do the analysis on those age groups. That kind of direction is helpful.
I'll give you one example where sports has crossed over to sort of play, and that's a really difficult sort of line to draw, whether you're catering for the sports versus just playground areas. But basketball hoops is a real easy one because it doesn't take up too much space. 2 basketball courts were put on tennis courts in Fern Hill, and I went there and 7 people were playing basketball and 2 people were playing tennis on that. And tennis obviously takes up a fairly large space. So, they're all teenagers, funnily enough. So we do cater for teenagers, but I don't think we do it purposefully, except for in that example where we did, and it certainly was used by teenagers. So.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So this is just you're coming to us, and then you're getting feedback from us, and then you're going to go out for engagement.
Yeah.
And following on from Cody's the age thing, have we not gone wider than age 13 plus or teenagers and beyond? So is like catering to older people?
So far in our analysis, we haven't gone beyond the teens, but we can incorporate that, and we have had helpful feedback from Health New Zealand about things that we could add to help support.
So I feel like it's kind of a playground strategy, not play strategy at the moment. Just looking at Invercargill's one, because they talked about it last year, and it's about like the whole city and changing the way that like everyone interacts with stuff, and I feel like that's a really great kind of play strategy. So I would love to see more of that. The other thing I noted, and do you just want us to like email you and see feedback? Do you want us to email you? Because I know it's like we're past time.
Yeah.
There's some Māori elements, but I would love to see more and more like place-based stuff. Yeah, that's my 2 little things now, but lots of thoughts. But I love it. Yes.
Useful, great feedback. Yeah, I think we'll take it on.
I just got a really quick thing to add. I think all ages is probably a good way to capture that teenagers and beyond, or us researching what other areas have done in that space. But what we are currently guiding developers to do without the strategy is to say we really want multi-purpose, flexible spaces that do, you know, how do you create a space that can be used by a large range of activities and groups and ages, as opposed to, you know, could is there some smart design out there where you can have paddleball, what's called pickleball, tennis, basketball, and how do you safely incorporate all the different elements into that? And that's, especially with the density we're seeing, I think that's where it's harder to get lots of different reserves that do lots of different things. We need to be smarter and get larger spaces that can do lots and lots of different things.
There's a safety element, not just physical, but psychological safety around these areas too, I imagine. So,
yeah, we want them to be welcoming places that are really easily accessible as well. So.
And yeah, we've listed some imaginative play like walkers and boundary and those kind of things. And yeah, it'd be great to get more feedback on those types of play elements from a cultural perspective.
Thanks, Jenny. Just thinking of time, and I'm just going to go online quickly because John and Kathy are still there. I just wanted to check whether you guys had any initial quick comments. John?
No, just interested in the discussion. I do see some merit in including older age groups, think in terms of, say, petanque or exercise equipment. But yeah, if that, I wouldn't call it a priority, but if you are doing that strategy, it might be worth including that as an extra category at the end. But yeah, great work, and I see the logic behind what you're doing and why.
Okay, thanks, John. Kathy?
Yes, thank you. There's so much to love about this, isn't there? And my encouragement is really to go for it. I mean, this is a strategic look and an opportunity to really look at the whole ecosystem. And I really want to tautoko what others have said about age. There was a survey that Age Concern did in Central Otago a few years ago where this first emerged, but I've certainly heard more about it in the years since, which is that that there is so much benefit for seniors to have, well, let's call it a senior playground, but I really love the idea of making spaces flexible, but to particularly have all these different age groups in mind when those designs come about is really important. And that's the strategic opportunity I see here. So I certainly would love to see all these different age groups considered. And then when the actual spaces get developed, some of the fun in play is adapting those spaces and making up new things to do in these spaces. So I think that will happen. And the other thing I wanted to say is just thinking about some of the other multidimensional aspects like ability and accessibility. There's a disabled accessible playground in Allenby Park that's been a big hit. So just continuing to take those issues into account would be great. Oh, there's also a musical playground going in, I believe it's going into 3 parks. So whilst you mentioned there's not a whole lot in that sensory space currently, that is one example that should be coming online in the next year or 2, I believe, in Wanaka. But thanks so much for this work, and it'll be great to get some further public input during consultation.
Thank you.
One last, sorry. I'm just really curious on the other side, talking about cost and increased risk and liability. As we add more of these parks or developers produce more of these playgrounds, that increases the council's risk and liability. Is it exponential every time one's added, or how does that all work? And increases your renewals too, right? Every 10 years, you're renewing playground.
Yeah, that's part of the need for this strategy, is to collectively look at what the implications are for that.
Right.
You know, how do we need to be putting the right budgets in to ensure we can maintain them and renew them, and yeah.
So that will come out, and then there'll be like an average cost per playground for renewals. I love Simon nodding in the background behind you.
I guess it's a little bit like the whole, trail conversation as well, it's like, but also the playground standards, like we do have quite strict requirements if someone else is building them, and we have an auditing system and all of those sorts of things. So I think there's pretty high confidence that we're not adding liability if they are, designed in accordance with the standards.
Because it's, well, a lot of these development playgrounds are quite elaborate, which would then come with higher compliance and I assume.
Yeah, so what these guys are talking about, provision and controlling the opportunity from the developers, but within the Parks team, we have a process where we control the outcome. And so one of the things of the contracts team is exactly that. What we don't want to be handed is something that's got really high compliance costs, something huge renewal costs. So we actively engage in that process to ensure the outcome. Yes, that actually is happening. That happens right now.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Okay, that's something that the contracts team to the receivers of those goods really daylight all the time.
And the only other thing else I can see. And then I just thought, I've been to lots of these playgrounds, or some of them at least. Not for me to play. But then also a lot of times, we also know lots of playgrounds between here and Christchurch, for example. So, we've looked at the population of the areas, but there's also, I guess, you consider the passing through or visiting population as well when you're making these sorts of decisions. I don't know, ones like Kingston, it's off the main road, but it's possibly a place where people pull off to have a rest and kids play on the playground, and there'll be other ones as well. I guess that has to form part of that.
And you would, that's sort of the categories in the park strategy is around, is it a destination? Do you drive to it? Do you go out of your way to it? Or is it one that, just a lot of neighbour walks to get the kids out of the house sort of thing?
Yeah. That's good. Thank you.
All right. I think we might draw close to it there. Okay, thanks very much, Jen. Christine. We might close the workshop.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, guys. Yes. Strategy.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.